Hi everybody, Yarn Fairy here. Wanted to share with you my toe up two at a time socks. I suffered from single sock syndrome when I worked my socks cuff down on DPNs. I loved them. I got them done in 2 days, but for some reason I started hitting a wall and started doing only one sock. So what I decided was that I was going to learn, no matter what, I was going to learn how to make them toe up two at a time, use up all my yarn, and I was going to get them finished and be done when I was done. So I now have drawers full of socks. I've learned my best way for knitting socks. It might not be your best way. You might have a better toe that you like to do better, or a different heel that you like to do better, but this video is solely for, well, it's not solely for people who are new to this technique, but I want to bring you guys along. Those of you who stopped knitting socks, or because of single sock syndrome, or you just burned out, or you had too much yarn left over, or socks got too complicated. Whatever the reason, I'm glad you're here, and I want you guys to enjoy your sock knitting. I suffer from chronic laryngitis. I'm really sorry. My voice is always like this. This is actually a good day, probably. Anyway, so drawer full of socks, get my patterns, and then follow along with me, because I'm not going to be sharing charts with you today. I'm just sharing techniques. And right now we're going to start with the very basics. We're going to start with the cast on. My favorite cast on, the fastest, the easiest, the only thing I use anymore is called the figure 8 cast on, and it's done on a 32-inch size zero needle, which is basically how all my socks start now. So without further ado, let's get on to it. I want to warn you, if you're motion sick, close your eyes. I'm going to move you because I found that the best way of doing this, showing detailed work, is to be really close up to the work. So here we go. Right here we have one sock already cast on, but oh yeah, right, two needles together. What I want to do is share with you how I did that. So we're going to be working from the inside and the outside of the ball of yarn. You put a slip knot onto the needle closest to you and pull the end so that it cinches up nice and tight. And then all you do is hold your tips together and wrap in a figure 8 and put on the front needle and the back needle the exact number of stitches that you need per the pattern for your size foot. A standard size 7, I usually recommend 10 stitches. For men's socks, larger socks, people with feet larger than a 7 normal, or not normal, but what do they call it? Average? Narrow? Anyway, size 7, you usually use 30 stitches. What did I do here? Okay, so here's the slip knot. It's on the needle closest to me, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stitches. You end putting it on the needle that's closest to you. Now what you're going to do is you've cast on 2, you're going to pull this needle, the one that's closest to you, out, and you're going to begin working your sock. In the first row, you just knit. It's a little fiddly, but really kind of not. You're just going to work across the sock and cinch it up as you go along, leaving that excess so that it hits the tail, and you just weave that in later. You can just, well, actually, let's slip the knot over to the other side so we don't get lost. And then we're going to knit across the other sock. Looks like I twisted it, but it doesn't matter because it's a figure 8 and it's so easy and forgiving. you're just going to work around the first row. Like I said, picking up that excess on the needle as you work the stitches, because you're going to weave that in later. Now the way you work them is just to pull, holding your work, get the other needle, sorry about that, back into play, and you're just, going around here. And then you're going to work the other side. Here's your slip knot. You're going to pull that off because we don't work that. And then you're just going to work your stitches. And like I said, that weaves in later, so don't worry about the excess. You'll just pull it up and weave it in. And I like to weave in that end fairly soon, like within the next row or so that you don't get confused with that long tail hanging out there thinking that it's your working yarn. And you're just working along. Work all your stitches and then move on to the next sock. And then you're going to move on to the next video, part 2, and then part 3 will show you heels, but part 2 is going to show you how to do the increases. This is just the first row. Okay? So there you have it. One row, figure 8 cast on. And they're done. There's your 2 socks starting up.